attempt to rein in the internet, the free press. The thought police are in place. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency DARPA is working overtime to be able to read people's minds. All the stuff we wrote about 20 years ago, Doug and Joe, especially in Genetic Armageddon, is now here. So having said everything that Greg Evenson has written about over the years, spoken about, had his meetings all over the country to try and prepare and to warn, now the headlines are screaming to anybody that, and I would say this, can even think rationally or historically as to the lateness of the hour, and yet, well, we on the internet and on alternative talk radio get a massive amount of real data. The majority of people still, the majority, in many of the cases in our own families, do not understand the lateness of the hour. And by great disconnect, it seems like, and I'm going to turn right over to Greg and let him start, and then we'll go back and forth as we usually do. The great disconnect seems that there is no ability to apply thinking beyond what the contemporary set of circumstances indicate. In other words, life is still going along the same as it's gone along, freedom slipping away, new draconian legislation, the American public being absolutely vilified. And years ago, Doug, I think when I started on talk radio, I started talking about identify, vilify, nullify, destroy. And now we've come to the nullification phase of truth, and the next phase is the destruction of the truth tellers. So tonight as we go on the air, we've got so many things to talk about, but the point that everyone has got to ask the Lord, and they have to go to the Lord on this, Lord, am I seeing the world through the way I want to see it, or are you showing me the things you want me to see, because I'm failing to emotionally come to grips with what is really transpiring? Good example, as we keep hearing that there's more and more armor going into the Ukraine. Today the United States, I think, dropped off over 100 pieces of artillery into Latvia. The point being is that nothing seems to be settling down. You couldn't send more strident signals and absolutely in-your-face directives than President Putin has shared with the United States, yet our president made the statement that, Putin is our number one enemy. So, this whole thing becomes beyond the theater of the absurd, Doug, Joe, Greg. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg because, again, the great disconnect, as I'm using that word tonight, is simply the fact of not being able to apply the information that Greg, myself, others, you guys have put out, your guests have put out, Paul McGuire, good night. It just goes on and on and on. And please, I'm not trying to point out anyone at the exclusion of anybody else, but to get to the topic tonight, people have got to understand that a change has taken place. And I'll make this statement. The United States of America that was no longer exists. You've seen the Republican Party sell you down the tube. Those of you who are looking for a political solution to a spiritual problem, shake your head as Boehner turns into the quintessential bottom-embracing conservative, and absolutely everything heads towards the eventual blow-up of WW3, World War III. We've seen that British helicopters have been shot down by the Iraqis, dropping supplies to ISIS. We've seen and heard C-130s of the United States dropping. So the point being is that in the theater of the absurd, the only losers are the people that still believe everything is fine and nothing changes for the worse. So tonight I pray by the grace of God that you'll incline your ears unto understanding. As I've said for 20-some years on talk radio, take it to the Lord in prayer. If there are some things that are hard for you to understand or grasp, please take it to the Lord in prayer and ponder these things to ask yourself, what has become of this once great nation, and how have the American people turned into the powers that be's worst enemy? Go ahead, Greg.
Well, thank you, Steve. Steve and Doug and Joe, it's a wonderful privilege once again to be with you. I'm on the far side of the recovery from some pneumonia on top of everything else, so bear with me tonight, folks. My voice sounds a little bit different. It's just because of the after effects. Gentlemen, I don't know that I can put into words. First of all, Steve, thank you very much for that introduction. It was timely, cogent, it was common sense, and it really does strike to the heart of where I think this is going to go tonight. We've shared so many broadcasts, Steve, in various venues of concerning events and things that are coming, things that have happened, as you so eloquently said. And yet, people continue to deny and look the other way because it's more convenient. It's simply a matter of choice that they're making. Look, if the four of us are walking in the woods around where I live, I have to tell you, if a large black bear were to walk up behind one of you and you didn't see it coming, I would tell you. I'd make some kind of signal, or I'd just say, now don't panic, but there's a bear coming up behind you, and number one, I would feel that obligation to do that because I'm a human being, a guy that tried for years and years in both military and law enforcement to help people, not to be a hindrance to them. I was a peace officer, and I viewed it very respectfully that way, and so I would try to help. But if you're standing there looking at me and seeing the expression of my face and listening to my words and saying, oh, no, not really, I don't believe you, Greg, that's not happening, and at that same moment, the bear comes up and decides that your leg looks like a pretty good hors d'oeuvre, I just wonder then what your reaction is going to be. And if we can get through that silly metaphor, I simply want you to know that we are in that time at this moment when you have been warned, you have been given the best information available on planet Earth. We're going to give you a bunch more tonight, and if this does not light your fire, then your wood's wet, and you're not going to get anywhere. And I refer you to Isaiah chapter 57, verse 1. It says, the righteous perisheth, and no man layeth it to heart, and merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous are taken away from the evil yet to come. Now, I cannot be more precise. There is a time that we are entering right now where the military and law enforcement agencies, and I'm sorry to tell you that there is still a fairly significant number of both, that will follow their orders. And when that occurs, the days that we have seen and lived through right now up to this point will be Sunday afternoon in the park compared with what is coming. There will be no backup. When that door slams behind you, when you turn around to open that door, all you'll get is a concrete wall. The door is gone. You cannot possibly absorb what's going to take place on a national and an international level with whatever you think you have in this world at this moment if you have not prepared. First, spiritually. First, foremost, and always, spiritually. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ and you have not begged the Lord himself to forgive you, then you must do that. Secondly, if you have not prepared your family, then you are negligent men. And if you have not established a plan to deal with whatever will be coming out of Washington next, then you are negligent again. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to put it on the government that they should have taken care of you. I'm not going to put it on the states that somehow they should be issuing programs that you can take in and get some kind of card from the state so that you can run it through the machine and get whatever you want. It's not going to happen that way. It's not now and not ever. When you consider the technology that we have in this nation that has built great underground complexes, some stretching out under the ocean, so that we have that cushion should there be an asteroid strike or whatever it might be. You've got to understand that there is only so much that you can rely on anyone else to do except Jesus Christ. But in the end of it, when you're standing there trying to justify to your family and your friends and those around you why things are happening, you won't have an answer. And when they say, well, what are we going to do? You won't have an answer. And when they say, what's going to happen to us? You won't have an answer. So it is way past time not to, we always qualify it this way, and I'm sorry, I guess we shouldn't, but I do because, again, I'm a human, and I'm sympathetic to those that have closed their eyes and ears to what's happening. And so I'm saying to you one more time, would you please listen. Listen tonight carefully. And as this information is imparted, some of it is out there in the zone where, you're going to say, well, how does that affect me? Well, it doesn't directly affect you, but it indirectly affects you and is a cause and effect for the other issues that will be coming your way because of government edicts or government claims that we must do this or that because it's in our safety and security interest to do so. Now, with that little bit of an opening, I have to tell you, gentlemen, I didn't realize until I got up this morning that 65 years ago today I was born. And I've never called it my birthday. I've always called it my anniversary of my birthday. So it's really a double privilege for me to be on this day with you. Well, I don't know. I know that's kind of self-serving. Didn't mean it that way.
No, not at all. Happy birthday, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. Bless you too. Look, Steve, the first one I want to touch on today, then I'm going to hand it back to you for a little bit, let my voice rest. If I talk for 10 or 12 minutes, then I can hand it back to you. I get a little chance to rest. There is several, as you know, Steve, and I've shared these with you because I know that you are a great arbiter of information. You are a fellow that gathers better than most military intelligence folks that I know. And when you take it, you put in not only your own evaluation, and maybe a hypothesis will come out of that, but more often than not, it's not guesswork. You use the information you have from your sources, and more times than not, the information I have and the information you have coincides directly, and we can come to a conclusion. We wouldn't tell you that they're always perfect, but we put the best effort we can into it. We're kind of the modern version of the DEW line. The DEW line in the 1950s, distant early warning. We call ourselves watchmen, I guess, also, but the DEW line was there to intercept Soviet bombers when they came across the Arctic Circle. And now I see it as that distant early warning must now become much closer. And as we've talked many times about the marching hordes on the fortress or the castle, and how as far out as they could see when the dust trail appeared, the first warning went up. When they could actually see the banners waving or the horses moving, it was level 2 warning, and level 3 was when they're outside the gates. We are at that point when we see the catastrophic failure of the Republican majority in Congress, even early on like it is, and we see what appears to be selling out by the Speaker of the House to the Democrats to achieve whatever agenda it is that he's got. Maybe it's just to retain his speakership. Julie, if you're listening out in Ohio, you need to get rid of that guy. Vote him out. It really comes down to we are no longer able to affect change. I had probably, Steve, and then I'll turn it right over to you, probably 300 in the last couple of weeks write to me and say, are you ever going to say anything good about the country? Are you ever going to be able to give us any hope or promise? And I thought for a moment, these poor folks that listen have got to be reaching deep inside and saying, my view is probably not. But I've got a reflective piece that I wrote a couple of days ago. The Lord woke me up about 2 o'clock in the morning, gave me the first line, and I mean it, folks. I was asleep, and I woke up, and here it was. So I wrote it. There's 33 verses. It can be done in a ballad form, but it was meant to give you an introspective look at what we have been and what we still could be. But whether or not we can pull it off, well, we'll just have to wait and see. So with that, Steve, I'm anxious to hear what you have to say tonight because I love the way we can dovetail off what's going on. I'm going to cover Operation Blowtorch when I come back.
Okay, well, Greg, God bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, as I put up in my alerts too, please continue to intercede for Greg. Great is the warfare against him. He had a really bad case of pneumonia, and by the grace of God, he's still been with us. And I want to take this time, Greg, to thank the intercessors worldwide that have been praying for you and believing. By the way, happy birthday, and thank God you're still with us. But also, the thing that is impressing on my spirit, ladies and gentlemen, is this. When Greg opened with that scripture, I know exactly what that means, and I know that, and you should too. A lot of us have lost loved ones. We've seen men and women of God go to be with the Lord, and that's the scripture that applies. Pastor Bruce York, I remember when the Lord took him, and I remember in the shower when just saying, Lord, either heal him. I was in the shower saying, Lord, either heal him or take him, and that's the Lord. That's the scripture God gave me, that he takes them away. The righteous are spared for the evil to come. It doesn't comfort everyone, and it didn't comfort me, but I understood what it was saying. Before I go on, I want to give you the word that I believe is for tonight for everyone. I want everyone to print this scripture out and start letting it indelibly impress your spirit. It's Isaiah 41:10 through 13. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee. I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Behold, all they that were incensed against thee shall be ashamed and confounded. They shall be as nothing, and they that strive with thee shall perish. Thou shalt seek them and shall not find them, even them that contended with thee. They that war against thee shall be as nothing, as a thing of naught. Now here it is, ladies and gentlemen, for I, the Lord thy God, will hold thy right hand, saying unto thee, fear not, I will help thee. And that's what tonight, I guess if there's a foundational framework of Scripture, it is that promise in Isaiah 41:10 through 13. For God says 3 separate times, fear not, don't be dismayed, for I am thy God. And in the day of evil reports, and I have to encourage myself in the Lord, not daily, that would be a lie, but sometimes hourly, and thank you for the intercessors and all those who keep me and Greg and Doug and Joe covered in prayer, but because it's almost like the evil reports now are accelerating like Gatling gun fire out of an AC-130 gunship. In other words, there's no time to reload. The rounds just keep coming in, and it's like you're in a fox hole, basically just trying to pray. Your body's up against the wall, and you're just trying to pray, oh, Lord, don't let the next one hit me. In the Psalm 11, verse 3, and this is where I think, Greg, Doug, and Joe, the disconnect comes in. It is really difficult for people to really, and I mean this honestly, understand that when the Bible says, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Greg just basically shared his thoughts to the people in Ohio about Boehner. And the situation that we all are in is that we all feel like we want to do something. And at this point, I want to make this clear. At this point, what we can do is pray, intercede, and break through. Now, here's something. Most people pray. Very few people break through. And very few people get the audience with the Lord where, and I'm not saying he doesn't hear all our prayers, but in an intercessory role, as one intercessor told me, she says, what people don't understand, Steve, is that when I was called to intercede for you, an intercessor literally covers that person's life with their life. So in essence, you ladies and gentlemen, you men of God, far and few between, but I'm praying, Greg, the more are rising up. That's not a put down, it's just a realization that you understand that you are the family's covering, and that you literally cover as an umbrella. You literally do anything and everything you can. And then, ladies, don't fight your husbands, but more so men, don't fight your wives who are trying to tell you to get prepared. That's what God put in their hearts, to prepare the nest. And I would say this, after 25 years on talk radio, and I say this not to flatter women and disparage men, but just to say, I call it like I see it, I would say it runs 3-to-1, women who get it versus men that don't. I know that there's a lot of you out there that feel isolated in your own lives because your husbands don't get it. I know a lot of you have children that basically just shake their head and snicker. And so at the point that we're at now, I'd say this, Greg, Doug, and Joe, maybe 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, people would never understand the statement that the enemy of a man's life would be those of his own household. Now we're there. The household of faith, as I've said, in the church at large, or that which calls itself the church, the ecclesia or ecclesia, the called out ones, and then within the household of faith. Kids basically thinking their parents are crazy, yet the parents were evidently not crazy enough that they couldn't raise the kids and put them through college and everything else. And so the point that I'm trying to make in this whole thing is that if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? It also says in Proverbs, I think, maybe it's Psalm or Proverbs, but when the wicked rule, the righteous mourn. And if it doesn't break your heart, here's something I want to share tonight too. I said, Lord, how are you going to soften the hearts of your people? I said, Lord, people being beheaded doesn't do it. And what I'm gauging that by, I'm not talking to individuals out there that, get it, weep and everything, but I'm talking about at large, the very few. Thank God for Franklin Graham. And don't any of you sniveling wimps send me any emails about Franklin Graham. He's standing up, he's speaking out, and he's one of the only men of God. I think Jack Van Impe is too. I don't watch Jack Van Impe, but some of those of you do that, speaking out against us. But how hardened are our hearts? God rebuked the children of Israel when he said, your hearts are so hardened, you don't even blush anymore. There's nothing that will cause you to blush. If children having their hearts ripped out, and somebody said, you're a bloody man, Steve. I said, no, I'm not. I'm a man that is sickened by the blood that's spilled. I'm a man that's heartbroken by the blood that's spilled. I wouldn't do what I do if I weren't concerned with innocent blood being spilled. But yet, how many people, again, getting back on train of thought, don't even give it a second thought or to pray and intercede for our brethren in Iraq? They're being beheaded. They're being crucified. They're being mutilated. They're being, burned alive. Every form of heinous torture, every form of disgusting and perverted things that used to come out of medieval barbarism are now in our, I would say, before us daily. But does that cause us as a nation to repent? Does the fact that obviously the mosques in America outnumber the churches in America, and that the once, quote, Christian nation has now become basically infiltrated with the gods, little g's, the little demons, Paul says they're demons, and every shrine and temple to some new deity, fallen angel, or man-hating evil spirit? The point is, what does break our heart? So that's a question, Greg, I hold out before the Lord. Doug, Joe, Lord, what will it take to get your people to understand we're in the sights? It's not them. It's not the brethren over there. We hear that we're to pray for our brethren in prison. Thank God for Dave Daubermeyer and others that have been down in Kent Hovind's trial. Kent Hovind is absolutely a political prisoner being punished for his faith, and yet the mainstream churches don't even care. And I talked to one of the most famous, I didn't get to talk to one of the most famous. I tried to talk to one of the most famous lawyers in the country and was advised he wouldn't take the case of Kent Hovind. I offered, and I'm not saying this whoopee, but I said, look, I'll put up the retainer. I'll pay. I even asked two attorneys to do that, and these are prominent attorneys. So the deal is we've got a brother, and I'm told, Greg, that remember your brother in chains. Then we forget Pastor Saeed that's been held in Iran, and his, 5 or 6 co-pastors and co-Christians executed, and the 21 Christians taken down to the sea and beheaded by extremely large-looking men. Now, I want to just address that. I can't tell if that's photoshopped or not. It may be, but the point is that it may also be a test of the super soldier program that we'll get to maybe later in the show. You see, Greg and I don't sit here and BS people and try and titillate you with things that don't matter. In retrospect, I understand now how you can't expect people to deal and be able to embrace in their heart the things they can't see and hear, unfortunately, most people, until they see it. And in essence, that's what faith is. Faith is the substance of things hoped for or prayed for, the evidence of things not seen. So your faith is the evidence waiting for the answer to manifest. And so now we're at a time where basically everything that Greg has warned and I've warned, and I want to share something from someone who is a Cold War warrior, and I've got to put this in my own words because it's just I don't want to bring any undue slack to him. But there was a time when the prince and power of the air in his audacious bragging, there were still frequencies and signals to a lot of people around the world could listen to, and they could get understanding. Now he just shared with me, he said that, Steve, all the reports, all communication reports, no matter what the freaks they were on, even the ones that were still coming in from out of CONUS, continental United States, even those ones, including Russian transmissions, they're all being filtered out fully before entry into the Internet system in the United States. So, and this is somebody that knows this stuff backwards and forwards. And he said total censorship is now here. I hope, Doug, Joe, and Greg, that people understand that statement. Total censorship is now here. And here's what Mark Twain said, an interesting quote from Mark Twain. He said, it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled. I think the reason that has to be the case is because at least if you tell them a lie that reinforces their sedentary acceptance of a falsehood, in other words, underpinning a lie gives them an easier time with that lie. Bottom line is, my friend went on to say this, that right now, he said, anybody that looks, and I agree with this, the MSM, mainstream media, has been totally given over, and there is no truth into them. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a hero's hero. This is a man that was handpicked by the man who, Dr. Teller. So this is not a stupid man. But yet even he's saying, alas, the evil that they've done in increments now is total upon us. And listen to this, he said, from what I've seen, chaos will descend upon America, which once was, but is no more, all planned and now being enticed by those of evil. Again, ladies and gentlemen, remember this, that what we're talking about is a great disconnect, where we're disconnected from reality and the truth of God's Word. We're more than multiply connected with heavy-duty or HD cables right into the heart of the beast. And that's the television programming, it's the mainstream media, it's the mainstream madness, and it's the mainstream publications that are controlled by 6 corporations. So why is all this critical? Because when, as Doug wrote, and by the way, Doug, that was a neat way you laid out tonight's show in writing that, but the realization that Joe Average or Mary Average, and if your name is Joe or Mary, I'm not picking on you, those are 2 common names, when they come to the realization that the lights don't work, that their ATM card doesn't work, that their refrigerator doesn't work, that, and as you use the example, your pregnant wife can't get to the hospital, there's nothing to do. In essence, when it's one of those aha moments, and they have another word for that, but I'll leave it as aha moments, that everything is different now. I think that what God has tried to do by raising up the different voices on talk radio is to basically inoculate us against the shock, an inoculation against the shock that will come when this stuff comes on upon everyone instantaneously and without warning. So the point being is this, is that there's nothing more dangerous or hated in the world of the Luciferians than the truth. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, Greg, if I can interject something here, Steve, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to just mention something you mentioned, Steve. 2 things, actually. You mentioned things about the Muslims in the Middle East, the beheadings of Christians, and I just want people to know that I'm doing a deeper research paper on a topic that we covered in Orlando at the summit there. Right now, the doors have been open for years, beginning actually with Carter, but really accelerating under George W. Bush following 9/11 to allow Muslims into this country. What we have, Steve and Greg and Joe, are mosques, and each and every mosque, and this is what it is. They are teaching sedition, and they are attempting to change our democratic laws and institute Sharia law. They're attempting to convince us that Sharia can coexist with our constitutional law, which is a fallacy. But even more important, the paramilitary style training that's taking place inside the mosques, inside of urban training centers across the United States, and there is training, paramilitary training taking place. is real. The Islamic threat in this country is real, but the various websites that write about the Islamic threat, they stop at that point and say, well, the Muslims are the threats. Well, wait a minute. Muslims indeed have the propensity for the violence to cut off the heads of Christians, to crucify them. That is coming to America, folks. But understand this, it's bigger than that. They're tools of the power elite behind the faces of the political machinery. And the second thing I want to mention is also the cognitive infiltration we are experiencing. The Internet right now is using various websites, various people, various entities, and people are falling for this left and right to change our thought processes to suggest that none of this is happening. And we turn to the Internet for the truth, or seemingly for the truth, yet various websites that we supposedly can depend upon, or journalists who supposedly are conservative or at least well-informed, are in fact agents of the political machinery that we're fighting against. And we're seeing this divisiveness being created in such a manner that is causing chaos and confusion. And of course we know that out of order, out of chaos, that's the Marxist revolution type sentiment for the manufactured crises, and this is in order to, of course, force the one world government or new world order to rise, and there first must be chaos. And one of the methods will be chaos via the Islamic threat that exists within the United States. But it's just not Islam, it is the power behind it, their tools. And I just wanted to mention that because, Steve, you mentioned it about Christians being beheaded and such. It's coming to America. It's already here in America. It just hasn't manifested itself publicly. Go ahead, Greg.
Well, thank you, Doug. And let me tell you, that was perfectly timed and great information. Because what I think has happened, some people are going to understand this. Many won't. It has been an incremental rise in the amount of disinformation and the ability to confuse the average American citizen as to what is right, what is wrong, and what is acceptable under virtually all circumstances. In other words, we've been fed a series of lies for so long, we're beginning to think that this is the normal fare at the buffet. And so when we look at the reasons we're told that debt is okay, it's manageable on a financial level, that we're told that government can exceed the bounds of common sense and even constitutional bounds when necessary, so that the greater good of the people shall always prevail, as the saying went on the Pentagon desk. And you begin to think, why have they recruited us and taught us in our schools that all of these things are acceptable, that an alternate lifestyle is acceptable, that under certain circumstances lying and cheating are acceptable. Now, I have to tell you, when you have been under generations of that kind of teaching and control, that it is little wonder that the United States has been softened up from within, so that they cannot any longer, many cannot discern that which is truly right and truly wrong, truly moral and immoral, corrupt and incorruptible. They can't even begin to define it, let alone live it. So we have now come to the point where, having said that, we are now seeing mosques that are teaching, as you said so adequately, Doug, these philosophies of fifth column, of subversion. Why are we tolerating? The FBI knows of well over 50 Islamic terrorist training centers in the United States, and they will not lift a finger to interfere with them. Why? It's simple, because the agenda is that these folks are being prepared to put the coup de grace to the American way of life. And so, having had this as part of a national, governmental, White House, Congress, Justice Department agenda, we can't at this point, do anything except scratch our heads and say, how can this be? Well, it doesn't matter at this point. We are so far beyond being able to recapture our serenity and our peaceful way of life that we now must resort to fighting on two fronts. The first is intellectual and emotional, of course, because it goes hand in glove. And on the other level, we are preparing for physical resistance. And say, Greg, you can't utter that word. Yes, I can. And it is time. Now, the level of resistance and what you decide to do is each and everybody's individual decision. But I will tell you that the people in this country who understand what has happened and what is happening present tense are not sitting back just saying, well, whatever happens, happens. Gentlemen, it is now up to those who are veterans and those who are leading men within their families and communities to say no more. No more. If that's to tell the government, no more programs. If that's to tell the government, get out. You cannot do this. Leave us alone. Lawsuits. I commend the state of Alabama in their efforts to fight the federal government in the government's ongoing effort to try and make Alabama submit to a proposition dealing with gay marriage and other issues as well. You see, it has come to that point. We were so long suffering at the time of the colonists that we even wrote that phrase into the Declaration of Independence. And so when you suffer long enough, finally, there is a point of no return. It's that point when you're going down the runway in a plane and you hit V1, and when you pull back in the yoke and it doesn't go up, you're sunk because you can't stop in enough time and you haven't got anything to take off. It is the point of no return. And we have come to that point in this nation. You folks that are writing to me and Steve and other people and have this great concern, and I understand, and I agree with you certainly to a greater point. But you must understand that the country has gone so far below the waves that I'm not sure that even a great rescue effort can pull it out. I can now understand, Steve and fellas, I can understand how it is that our good neighbors to the north in Canada and lots of good folks south of the border as well, and around the nation, especially those in Australia, New Zealand, in England, in Germany, Russia. I hear from these folks because they are listening to these broadcasts. And I understand, ladies and gentlemen, I understand like I've never understood before, how it is that you've looked at the United States, number one for leadership, and you haven't seen it. Number two, for moral incorruptibility, and you've seen that fade away 50 years ago or more. And you've looked to the United States to be that great beacon, that lighthouse, and it isn't anymore. And so I'm thinking, what is it that we've squandered? It's not just a national heritage that was given to us by men and women of valor who have fought and died and stood for what's right and stood against the power brokers and stood against the corrupt and the evil. And yet now it's just easier not to. And so we've got, what do we have? We have the leadership we deserve. We have a president that can't call anything the way it is and calls a lot of things that shouldn't the way it isn't. So we end up having a melee over Ferguson, Missouri, but we can't take care of the issues with ISIS. Now, there's something terribly, tragically, catastrophically wrong with that. And the spirit of evil that prevails in Congress and in Washington and in many state houses is contributing to the demise of this nation. And so, at the end of the day, we must no longer simply sit back and analyze. And we can't just say, well, this is the way it looks. No. If you can't see it, then you're blind and don't know it. If you can't understand what's happening, then you need some serious counseling. But if you do get it, then you've got to be ready for what's coming. And you must recognize the components that are putting it together. Now, what do I mean by that? Look, almost every week or every 10 days, 2 weeks, I get a notice from someone that talks with me and tells me about various things going on at a governmental or military or law enforcement level, and I'm going to go through these. I'm going to cover these, the top 5 here in the next segment or so, and I will be coming to the top of the hour before too long, and so we'll hold over some of this. But for instance, what are we going to do what's the government going to do when there is a push on to protect an area with airborne assets that are private, or that are maybe perhaps of units that don't agree with what's going on at the national level? Well, then, theoretically speaking, and I guess, fellas, I have to say it that way because I'm not in a position to absolutely verify this. So theoretically speaking, the government is considering an operation called Blowtorch. What is that? It is an airborne anti-missile and anti-aircraft program that anything that is deemed hostile over the continental United States would be subject at any time that the airways are closed down and flight patterns are altered or closed down, and that would be one of the tactical responses, theoretically speaking, by the government. And so when you have it starting at that level, gentlemen, there is, and goes down incrementally, downward, right to the ground level, where you've got the WATS program, or the Weapons Acquisition and Targeting sequence, where anything that comes into that area is a target. And it's done by computer, of course, so quickly and so accurately that very little can survive an all-out frontal assault by integrated ground forces when that threat is acknowledged and faced. But my concern is that it will be applied toward the folks who say enough of this. We are not going communist. We are not going Islamic. We are not going into some kind of evil occult-type government. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that there are elements of the occult that are already within the government, but we're not going to give over to it. Now, if we're going to take that position, then you have to understand that the full array of everything at the government's disposal, many things here we'll talk about later, but I've got them all down here for you to listen to. We are at a point of, as I said, no return. Either this aircraft takes off or it crashes. We are no longer sitting at the runway discussing our takeoff roll. We are no longer on approach. We are no longer 500 feet down the runway and we have power failure and we can stop the aircraft. We are at the point of no return. Either we go ahead and through prayer first of all, and supplication and sacrifice, that is personal sacrifice, to bring about a spiritual renewal in this country, if it is possible, without the judgment of Almighty God falling first, then if we don't do it now, not 10 minutes from now, not 10 years from now, we must be underway now, then there is nothing left except our destruction. Steve?
I think that the word destruction, Greg, is one of the hardest words for people to wrap around their mind because, it's like they can look at the pretty coffin, but the pretty coffin doesn't matter how the nickel handles are, doesn't matter how pretty the brass or gold may be, how polished the wood may be. The bottom line is what's in that coffin is dead, has gone into eternity, either into the presence of the living God or damned to eternal damnation. And we're at the point now where all good men must come to the aid of their country, but also I'm thinking that a lot of women will lead the charge. For instance, Pamela Geller, an outspoken woman. I mean, I think of the women who have stood up and spoken out against Sharia and who have spoken out against militant Islam. I think of all the people. I know Phyllis Schlafly, and what a trooper she's been for 40 years, just fighting the progressive. And I'm telling you this, that right now we are in that zone. And as we get later into the show, ladies and gentlemen, the issue that I want to really deal with tonight is to wrap our heads around the fact that Hawk and I and Greg have done shows together. Greg has done shows with Hawk, myself, every form of who can do shows with whoever and whomever. But the point is that we are in the full-scale gray terror. Now, interject that into the mind of everyone. I've quoted Albert Pike's World War III his statement on generating the war between Muslims, Jews, and Christians. People say certain words didn't exist, but that's not true. It doesn't matter actually who wrote it. It's attributed to Albert Pike, but it's going by the book. Because concurrent with ISIS, concurrent with all this, is the war that's going on in the Vatican. Now, let me say this. I am not anti-Catholic. I am only making the statements I made 20-some years ago. I never will forget, Doug, Joe, and Greg, the day I said that a war will come in to the Catholic Church, and I'm not a seer or anything. I'm just stating what I saw in the sense, forgive me, what the Lord showed me, and this is really a good example. Did God show it? Well, if it comes to pass, I certainly couldn't have made it up in those days, but the issue is that the conventional Catholics would fight about the takeover, would fight with the Catholics that want to take over the Catholic Church and fulfill the Catholic prophecies that Tom Horn and Chris Putnam have written about extensively. And you can dismiss Chris and Tom if you like, but do so at your own, at your own detriment, because these guys nailed the fact that the previous pope would resign, and they pretty well got it spelled out. And then when Tom, here's the thing that amazes me, you guys, Doug, Joe, and Greg, when Tom and Chris go and talk to the leading philosophers and scientists behind the Catholic Church, and I'm talking people that are really, really bright, and in the one camp, they're looking for a non-traditional return of God, but not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, not the God of Genesis or the King of Glory and Revelation, but they're talking about the return of the fallen one to earth and the return, if you will, of the fallen angels setting up the old gods. Now, I want to say something. On my website, and this is critical, the Lord has raised up a gentleman named Michael. That's his real name. It's not a synonym or a pseudonym. The point is that, and he's been given some amazing understanding into the events taking place in the world as it relates to CERN, C-E-R-N. If you don't understand who the patron demon of CERN is, it's Shiva, S-H-I-V-A. And if you don't understand what it's all about, I suggest you read this, because as Greg Evenson and I are on with the Hagman and Hagman father and son team tonight, and this is the 10th of March, we're seeing things that are happening in a dual realm. Greg and I have tried to present to you the information, as well as others, of what's going on in the natural realm, but it's not an understatement, is it, Greg, to say that weekly you get reports from different people, different places. I don't know them, I don't want to know them, vice versa, I get them too, of events that are happening in the supernatural realm that you just simply say, Lord, your people are never going to believe this stuff because they don't even believe what they see. How can we tell them what's going on with what they don't see? And is that not sometimes perplexing to you, Greg Evenson? It is to me, my brother.
Well, I tell you, Steve, it has been, and the one thing that I've asked God is to give me clarification. And you mentioned you were in the shower earlier. 2 or 3 visions I've gotten have been in the shower, and I know people are laughing out there saying, "Well, that's all right, Greg, because you're all wet anyway." But it really comes down to God showing us these things. And after the break here, I think it would be wise to cover, perhaps even right away, since we're talking about it right now, but what is being held in Operation Supernova and the CERN upcoming very soon project there needs to be discussed, because it may well be a world game changer.
And sadly enough, I warned this was going to happen last year. I warned it was going to happen last summer when I started talking and doing those shows all over the country with this mass immigration from Mexico. And we had all of these people, the same liberals that are screaming that parents who don't vaccinate their children are screaming that the children coming from Mexico don't need to be screened medically and don't need to be vaccinated. We're going to have all these outbreaks everywhere, and exactly what I said was going to happen has happened.
Well, and where do you see it going, Ted? I mean, how do you see this playing out?
It's going to go to medical martial law. That's what's going to happen. And what they're going to do, see what they're doing here, they're beta testing this. I mean, they've only had 100 people, and they're making this big brouhaha. 100 people have measles, 150 or whatever, out of 300 million people, and they're making this giant brouhaha in the United States now over a disease that has like a 0.003 fatality rate. I mean, it's like 1 out of 10,000 kids die from it, and that's in like underdeveloped countries. I mean, it's complete nonsense. And the sad part about it is they're doing beta testing right now, and this is how they always do everything with the CIA. They always want to see how everybody's going to respond, so they can monitor the web traffic, they can monitor all of this stuff, they can say all these outlandish statements, and they can see what kind of blowback they get from the general population. And they're testing us. They're seeing if we're ready yet to start putting people in internment camps for vaccinations. Because what happens when they really do something, when they really roll something out like an Ebola or like the plague or something like that or smallpox, and they decide they're going to do that, and people don't want to get immunized for this or that, then they're going to have the ability to say, hey, wait a minute, we know exactly what's going to happen. We know how many media outlets we have to push this on. We know exactly what the pushback's going to be. We know the areas of the country of the pushback. We need to know where we need to really install the really strong martial law. And that's what this is all about, medical martial law, because that's going to be
here.
Well, what you've got, and I'm not a guy well-versed in physics, but I can tell you that the ultimate goal here is to accelerate particles to at or very close to the speed of light. Now, for some of you who are historically minded, you might remember that Albert Einstein said that was not an achievable goal, that reaching the speed of light had limitations. And so what has been happening over the last nearly a century is that there have been efforts ongoing, very small at first, of course, and then as time has gone on and technology has increased, the effort to actually create smaller particles or actually go to the smallest building block by the collision of these particles has resulted in the concept that there is a God particle. And if the God particle can be achieved, then the gateway or the doorway to perhaps another dimension, they'll couch it in terms that are somewhat acceptable to most people, but that is in essence what it is. And Steve, you can correct me if I've been wrong on this in a moment, but I think that's basically where it goes. It's a little more subtle than that as to the speed, and the speed is symbolic of another figure that we know out of the Bible. But what will happen, gentlemen, is either they will achieve their goal and a new dimension, a new level will be reached within physical science, or the possibility exists that a collision could create a disaster unknown, the resulting cataclysm in Switzerland as a result of this going badly could devastate a multi-mile area, basically in the ring of this accelerator. But the unknown is whether or not it could do further damage to the Earth itself, or perhaps create a black hole, a certain which would be would spell the end of the planet. So there are things that are happening. I'm not racing this out to the worst case. The scientists and the people that have been working with this are saying that themselves. And so Operation Supernova, meaning the birth of a star, or that great flash that occurs, has been assigned to this experiment. And I guess for the advancement of science, we're hoping that it goes well. I wish they wouldn't do it at all. I don't believe it's necessary. But then who am I? But is that a somewhat close rendition, Steve?
Well, absolutely, but even beyond that, Greg, the thing is that the Ouroboros, basically the thing that David Flynn wrote about, in essence, the snake eating its own tail in the Milky Way that basically moves at every 26,500 years. The point that David Flynn was making is that was, if you will, a time line. And what now CERN is doing, by the way, CERN is only 172 miles from the tomb of the Celtic prince that was just found. And what's interesting is one of the items that stood out in the Celtic, actually, people pronounce it Celtic, prince that was found, is a horned figure. Now, I want to share with everyone where I think it goes wrong in their understanding. Everything Paul says in Ephesians 6:12 through 14, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Okay? He identifies most of this stuff as the present rulers, but people don't understand that if you've ever seen any of the Greek really bad science fiction movies, they always show the Greek gods with little g's, the fallen angels, moving humans around as pawns on a chessboard. You've seen that, Greg, I'm sure. Doug, yes. Joe, you've seen it. With the very first, some of the very first science fiction movies were basically really bad adaptations of Jason and the Argonauts, etc. And there's a perfect example where in every one of these things, it's the gods, again, I say with little g, the demigods, that move this around. What's interesting, though, is in the stuff, and look, there's so much stuff to talk about, Greg, on CERN, and I want to draw everyone's attention. If they'll go to my website and start with CERN 1, I did not put the stuff together. I put part of it together. But the point is that when God, out of his love, and this is where people don't get this, and this is why I'm going to say it one more time, when God, out of his love, kept back the unseen forces of hell and darkness, there was a protective barrier that the Lord himself put in place, that just as he put Adam and Eve in a garden, he basically put us into a place of safekeeping when we honored him. The powers of darkness and their servants are trying and going to succeed to literally bring down all the gates of hell, open up all the portals of hell, set all that which has been bound for the sake of mankind to keep us from being destroyed, opening that up. So, excuse me, the disconnect that I speak specifically tonight while we're on the radio is the fact that it's spiritual and natural. And the place I'm trying to segue to transition to, is to get people to understand that when Paul says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the ruler of darkness of this world, he's talking about everything that's being invisible. Now, to CERN, I was contacted some years ago, and even by told by special operations generals a number of years ago what was really going on with that. And according to them, now these are guys that you could relate to, Greg, in the military, but these are guys that are no nonsense people. And when they're telling me that they're seeing entities and light entities, in essence, at the end of the time tunnel, they're not kidding. A couple scientists got a message to me and basically said, "Look, this is what they're doing." And what they're doing, and this is why it was shut down. Now, what Joe was just speaking about is duplicating the power. Isn't it interesting, Joe, that in order to break through, they realize they've got to up the power almost exponentially. So as Greg was giving Einsteinian physics, saying there's nothing faster than the speed of light, or that's what basically Einstein postulated, that's no longer true. I mean, Doug, we've done shows, and there have been numerous stories that, yes, things can travel fast as the speed of light. A good example was a classic experiment, two people separated by distance and having an instantaneous thought where it appears, and that gets into basically quantum physics and a thing called superpotential. But the point that I'm trying to make in all this is that what they're doing with CERN, and this is, I think it's just cool of God, where he says, one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit is discernment. Now, when you look at even CERN's logo, it's 666. The idea that men become gods, ye shall become as God, knowing both good and evil. Well, what they only see, Doug, or what they're postulating, Greg, is that this can only be for our betterment. But again, supernova, and I want to make this clear for everyone, the world is not going to blow up, okay? the world is going to hell up. Everything in hell is going to come up. It's going to be like everything that's been loosed. Imagine if you live in a small town. Here's the best illustration I can give you. Let's say you live in a town of 2,000. You got a prison of 20,000. All of a sudden, 20,000 prisoners are let loose in a town of 2,000. Now just scale that into the realm of an innumerable number of fallen angels. Obviously, God knows the numbers, but I don't. And then they're all released on the earth at the same time. That doesn't present a good time for baseball, hot dogs, and apple pie. So that's what we're heading up for, and that's why when the angel, and I said this before, if an angel cries out in the book of Revelation, woe, woe, woe unto the inhabitants of earth, for the devil has come down knowing he's got, I'm paraphrasing, his time is short, then what do you expect payback to be like? And so this is the thing, Greg, that I want to, try and get through to people tonight, that in essence, on the left hand, everything we've talked about, it doesn't matter if it's a financial, martial law, forced vaccination, medical martial law, all these things, that's on the left hand. The ultimate goal of everything, the ultimate goal of the Illuminati, the Luciferians, the globalists, the elite column, is the destruction of 6-point-whatever billion people to leave 500 million. Now, we can talk about the Georgia Guidestones since the time they were first erected. I can quote, I think I did this one time, Doug, on a 3-hour show. I can't say I quoted every statement, but years ago I quoted every statement that had to do, in the 3-hour time frame, with the destruction of humanity. From Prince, Philip saying he wants to come back as a virus if there was such a thing as reincarnation. By the way, they do. Yesterday, Greg, I don't know if you saw it, Doug and Joe, but the front headline is Google 500. In other words, Google says it's going to be a common thing to live to be 500 years old, and obviously we know from Methuselah was old, he was 969 years old, and so things are going to change. The atmosphere is going to change. I'm talking not the political atmosphere, I'm talking the physical atmosphere. The chemtrails are changing it, and what happens is that these entities have to take on physicality, and one of the ways they take on physicality, and this was told to me by by a multiple star general, higher than most people are aware of, is that they need to basically geoengineer the earth to take it back to the primordial days, okay? In other words, and gravity is going to change. And so all of the earth changes, and look at just the drought. If you can always look at everything simply this way: control equals death. Control equals death. They control the water. Obviously, the crops don't grow. People can't raise cattle. People starve. And at the same time, shot in the arm, shot in the head, either way you end up dead. The fact that the information against vaccines is so, let's just say this, there is no way to say that there's any information that can show vaccines are good. Only 18% of the new flu vaccine is effective. CDC admits to an 82% failure. Well, I got news for you. I don't like those odds. And I would say this: damn the thinking, and I mean that, to the literal hell that would cause these little children to suffer and to end up with autism or dead. And I mean that, again, I will say that. Damn to the deepest hell. Now, someone say, well, if you were a real Christian, you wouldn't swear. The word damnation I'm using about is the eternal separation from the living God of all righteous, everything is beautiful, fair, and true, and an eternal, if you will, misery index that everything that even they enjoy will be cut off from them forever. So as the person who was talking, Doug, who was doing the talking during the break, talking about the CIA and the forced vaccinations, checking the response?
That was Dr. Ted Broer. He's a friend of the program. Okay. He also subs for Joyce Riley.
Okay. Well, God bless him, and I mean that. I guess I'm a little ignorant out of this, but what he was saying is absolutely true. They test. Now, notice the ATF, just switching gears, has stated that they're taking back the idea of SS-109, the steel penetrator 223 ammo, being kept off the market. Why? People started to scream, but I think what we need to get people to understand is that how do I say this tactfully? Is that They are. At the day they come, make no mistake, they are coming. Because they haven't come yet doesn't mean they won't come in the future. And that's the mindset that only God can give to each man. Greg, I spend on my emails, I get them tonight too, I spend so much time trying to tell Christians that they love God, they can withstand, they can fight evil. Don't let them kill your children. Don't let them, And they always give me, well, thou shalt not kill. Well, that means thou shalt not murder. But again, Paul said if any man doesn't provide for his family, he's worse than an infidel. That's a dog. Yet how, Greg, can I say this? How, and this is a rhetorical question, I'll give it to you, how can you get people to understand that nowhere in the Bible does God say, go ahead and commit suicide? I've always been taught it's wrong. Yet people, under the guise of a false religious spirit, think that somehow watching their loved ones slaughtered is to the glory of God. Have you come to a rationale in your own mind? I haven't. I think they're just cowards.
I agree with you about that, and I think it is an excuse that many people make because they simply, number one, have not thought it through. Number two, they do not have the skills or the knowledge necessary to defend themselves or their family. And because they do not, they give a false claim of righteousness by I cannot kill, I cannot do this, I cannot lash out that way. It has nothing to do with killing. On occasion, I'm just going to say this the way it is in real life. There are times when killing is necessary. There is nothing that will substitute for it. Now, I have to tell you, if ISIS attacks the area I'm in, now make no mistake, ISIS is in this country. They're just not organized well enough yet, quite yet, to be able to have concerted attacks on the infrastructure or various population centers. But they are here. If you don't think they're here, well, go ahead and think that. And if you're comfortable with that and let you sleep better, go ahead. But it's not going to change what's happening. And so I will tell you that those moments that occur, Steve, where it is necessary to take that ultimate step, it is something that at that very moment, you know in your heart and your mind instantaneously that it's either correct and God understands it, or it is not. If it is not, it should not be done. But if it is a matter of defending your life, your family's life, your friend's life, your neighbor's life, because of a concerted attack to take your life, your innocent life, because you've done nothing to be offensive to the person except exist, then it is incumbent on you to take that which is necessary to do. Now, having said that, I realize I'll get criticism for it, but oh well, I get criticism all the time. What I'm saying to you is, it is coming down to that. We have no options left. And because we don't, it will then boil down to how do you do that? How do you make that final defense? Well, if you're part of Operation Ricochet, you won't have that opportunity. And here's why. The government realizes they can't confiscate 200 million weapons in the hands of the American people. But if they dry up the ammunition supply, guess what? All you've got is a $1,000 club. And it can only work once or twice. So what is happening, Steve and Doug and Joe, this is a fact right in front of our eyes. The manufacturers of ammunition in this country have been in the gun sights of the government and the anti-firearm industry for many years. But it has come about because we finally have someone in the White House that doesn't care and will not be stopped by public opinion or polls or anything else. He is going to achieve what he can achieve because that is the agenda that he absolutely has sworn allegiance to. It's not about history. It's not about watching what's happened across in the Middle East. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with controlling the American people completely, totally. Constitutional precepts doesn't matter. It is the only thing that matters to the people in power at this moment. is that the American people will have no choice. They will do what they're told to do. Now, as a result of that, those same manufacturing companies are under edicts that they are now drying the supply of .223 ammo, the same as 5.56, virtually, just the same ammo. One's military and one's civilian designation. But it doesn't matter. If that is gone, it's a very, very popular round. It has some ballistic limitations. We don't need to discuss that, but it is very popular. Now, these companies understand that they are going to reach a point where they can no longer manufacture to the general public. They can to the military and to police agencies, but not for general civilian consumption. The same thing is happening, Steve, and we had this discussion, that the larger rifle calibers, especially those in 30 caliber, which would be 30-06, 30-30, 30-M1, and so forth. All the 30 caliber, 308, are next in line. Why? Because they're reach out and touch bullets. They've got in excess of 200, 300, 400, 500 yards or greater, and so the folks that are going to wage war against the American population at some point in the near future don't want the duck hunters and, well, not duck hunters, but large game hunters in Wisconsin and Michigan, numbering about 700,000, to be sitting out in the bush waiting for them to walk through. So if they dry up the ammo, they can't do anything. And right behind that will come 45 caliber, 40 caliber, 9 millimeter, and so forth, right down the line. So that
Greg,
those, yes.
Sorry for interrupting, but you mentioned that there was an edict issued. My question to you is, do you have any information that the government is paying these companies extra money to make sure that this happens, or is this through threats, veiled threats of complete shutdown, that they're being able to do this and get away with it?
It's not a threat, Joe. It's just simply, we are the BATFE, and you'll do what we tell you. And it's coming down. They know that the White House and elements within Congress are absolutely right along with them, so they have nothing to fear. Now, whether or not these companies are being offered cash incentives to not manufacture, that I cannot tell you. I do not know that. But now let's just speculate a moment, and I'll label that as speculation. Why wouldn't they? They do it with a number of other areas where there are financial rewards given for various restrictions placed on the American scene. So it's like, okay, why wouldn't they? And I don't know. I would like to think that the management of these companies are so, in my world, I would like to think they're so upset about it, they wouldn't even contemplate it. But on the other hand, I don't know. I'm not saying they would, not saying they wouldn't. But it certainly could be in the mix. But the result, it doesn't matter. The result will be the same, and that will be a general drying up of the availability of the ammo. Look, when you've got, in some cases, 1 million rounds going out of a store or a community area in one day, and hundreds of thousands of rounds just all across the board, everywhere in the country, people standing in line, getting down to the end of it and having one box left. You see, we speculated on this. We talked about it. We've said it before on your program and others. And you know, I got the usual email. Never going to happen. This is America. They can't do that. Well, they've done it. And they're going to continue to do it because no one in government circles has the ability nor the courage to stop it. And so they're, in the name of that license, they are taking the complete, absolute. They do whatever they want, and it's going to continue because it cannot for them to achieve their agenda. And again, that goes full circle. And for those of you who think it's a conspiracy and a conspiracy theory, go ahead and think that. But for those of you that understand that it's happening and part of our national fabric, just as we speak, then you're light years ahead of everybody else. I hope that answers a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Well, let me just Hey, Doug, let me chime in here. Obviously, I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people say, call me. I talked to Greg about this a couple days ago, but I talked to one of the guys who I've known for years and years and years. He listens to this program, by the way. Works for one of the biggest sporting good distributors in the world. He said that they sold 1.5 million rounds of .223 ammo when that thing was proposed in 4 hours. I then asked him, I said, well, Ron, first name, and there's a lot of Rons out there. And I said, but tell me how everything else is. And when, primarily when you're talking 30 caliber rounds, you're talking 308, or after the Soviet Union pretty much was, I say, orchestratedly taken apart, then everything went to 7.62 by 7.62 by 39, which is a standard Eastern Bloc round, which is also 30 caliber. But between 308 and 7.62 by 39, this is important for people to understand. This isn't just guys talking bullets. Shiploads of that used to come in. I mean, freighters full, and shipping cargoes and containers. And when the current man in the White House took control, a lot of that imported ammo was banned from coming in, and a lot of it sat in ports. But what I think that people have got to recognize is this, and this is, again, the topic of tonight. You must do everything to stop evil. Evil will manifest in ways that no one can imagine. And one of the guys that wrote probably the best series of I would say the best functional survival novel out there was a friend of mine named Bill, and he goes by the name of Aftermath Bob. And, it's amazing because I think he's on the 12th edition of those books, and that the enemy has withstood him from publishing those for a long time. And the point that I'm trying to make in all this is that here's an ex-military guy walking you through a real scenario who does understand all of the ramifications of what it means to survive, and whether you're going to head out to sea, head into the Everglades, head into the mountains, or stay where you're at. And there are practical things that people can do to stay where they're at. But, Greg, the people that have responded the most to my message to get prepared, this is astonishing to me, but I'm grateful for it. And it really doesn't surprise me a little bit, yet it does, is while men will argue whether it's right to kill or not, the single woman, the lady who's a widow, the lady whose basically husband passed away in their 70s, they basically are nobody's fool. And I've learned a lot, about people. I have one friend who's pretty much paraplegic, and yet he's ready to rock and roll in his wheelchair. God bless you, Glenn. The point is that people will either be victims or victors. And unfortunately, I think when Jesus said, all we like sheep are led astray, and like we're led to the slaughter, it's because of our own terms. That scripture has always bothered me, the fact that why, Lord, do we have to be likened to sheep? And, when the enemy's out there roaring like a lion, because God even says in his word, the enemy goes about as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Well, anybody who's hunted lions or any dangerous game is defined as something that can kill you. The point being is that there's a whole different set of rules. But one of the rules is that you have to understand the game. You have to understand what the game's habits are, and you have to be prepared usually to be introduced into that world of hunting by a professional guide. All of those things that, ladies and gentlemen, I just said is what Greg over the years with his Castle Defense series has tried to do. And so, Greg, we all at one point in our walk and talk on talk radio thought that if enough people could only get it, if enough people would only rise up, wake up, stand up, speak up, and act up, but unfortunately those people came to this country as imports, now are a protected species, and we have become the endangered species. And if people can't see that we went totally from fighting militant Islam under President Bush, George, whatever his initial was, the last one, George W. Bush. The point is that we basically now we have become the endangered species, and it's like why all of the Hollywood movies are coming out, like the Hunger Games and others like that are basically showing people having to vie to literally fight to exist. Now, that could be a cinematic metaphor. It can be a cinematic container just to put those thoughts in. But again, remember, when you understand that Hollywood is controlled by the intelligence agencies, when you understand that Hollywood is controlled by the prince and power of the air, and that total, unabashed or non-mitigated Satanism rules and reigns in Hollywood, there are exceptions to that, but the majority, when you're seeing the Super Bowl or you're seeing the halftime shows in whatever award ceremony, and everyone's wearing glowing horns, as Nathan Leal has pointed out, and all of the different, if you will, symbolism. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, symbols mean everything as well as words mean everything. So when you see the times we live in, and I guess the point being is this, is that they have pushed in the natural, and at some point there's a push back. But then again, to segue into the realm of the supernatural, there was a song, and I don't listen to it, but they used to play it on a police show or something. What you going to do when they come for you? Well, the thing is, the answer to the Christian is, I resist in the name of Jesus. My Bible says that we're to resist evil. My Bible doesn't say we lie down and just, basically get trodden underfoot. And I've got to share this, Greg. There is a disconnect, Doug, Joe, and Greg, between the people that forget the book of Revelations. The fearful, the cowards, and the unbelieving go into the lake of fire along with the devil and his angels. So those are not qualities that God basically, how should we say, lifts up. Saying that again, show me any victory in the Bible that did not start with a battle. Okay? I want to challenge everybody, because when you're reading the Lord of Hosts is his name, God, David understood something. God, who is mighty in battle. God is not a pacifist. And that's the disconnect, because there is a war going on. Genesis 3:15, the enmity between the seed of the serpent and the seed of righteousness. There is a war going on. Yet somehow, Greg, there's a disconnect in Christendom that just doesn't affect anybody. Yet I will say this to those who think it no longer affects them. This war will encompass everyone. It will bring them into a place of unimaginable evil. I know this. I know that I can't sometimes deal with the emotions that I have. I have to submit them to the cross. I know that I can't handle and I've never seen war. I'm not a military guy. But when you get it in living color shown to you, sometimes 40 years ago, and you see it playing out, and the headline is playing out, and you saw the headlines 40 years ago, I'm talking about some of the things that happened to me, it is more than sometimes I can even deal with. I'm not saying woe is me, I'm just saying great is the Lord, and thank God for intercessors. Because you know this, Greg, and ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you know this, but Greg has paid a price. The enemy's tried to physically take him out. I'm talking bad guys shooting things at him. And some of you who are so smug saying, well, Quayle and Evenson, really, we're telling the truth, they'd be dead. No, because God has a way of keeping us on the front lines. And granted, Greg, I never thought, now here's the deal, I never thought that as I had a rifle, I'd have to have one of those old toy rifles that not only am I pointing my sights down range, okay, but I have a mirror with a second barrel pointing back, because, boy, those backstabbers get awful close. And, somehow open shoulder blades don't do well with open shoulders. They make too big a target for the knives that come in the back. So we're really in a difficult position, and that's where we're at right now, where now it's not just coming from a front. It's not a frontal assault. I remember saying just hearing the Lord. He said, you'll look to the left, the enemy will be coming from the left. You'll look to the right, the enemy will be coming from the right. You'll look in front, the enemy's coming from the front. You'll look behind, the enemy's coming from behind. And he said, then what are you going to do? And my answer is, well, I better look to you to get me out of it, because I know the scripture in Jeremiah that says, if I run against the footmen and they've wearied me, what am I going to do against the chariots when the swelling of Jordan? I think that's if for those of you that want chapter and verse, I will give you chapter and verse for everything I'm saying, because again, the kingdom of God suffers violent, and the violent take it by force. That means violent is pressure. You're being pressured. At some point, we all, as they say in North Carolina and in the South, we all is going to decide whose report are we going to believe? We all have got to decide whose side are we on. We all have got to decide who we're going to stand with and who we're not going to stand with. And I love, Greg, what Pastor Langford said, and it's come to pass in your life, my life, our lives within the last year in big time. As important as it is, and Doug, you certainly know this, and Joe, as important as it is for God to bring the right people into our life, it's equally as important for him to take the wrong people out.
Correct. Steve, look, you were the architect, not of the actual lists, but of making sure that people understood that what is coming on the infamous red and blue lists are part of another program here that I'm going to discuss in just a moment. But before we leave this other, I wanted to say to you that I think some of the people that are most they're basically well-intended, but they're ignorant when it comes to, that means they don't have the fact. Stupids, when you got the facts, don't use them. These folks are ignorant. They just don't know. But they always rely on the theme that, well, you must turn the other cheek. And that applies, fellas, in my world. If someone walks up to me and says, hey, Greg, you're ugly, you've insulted me and I'm offended and whatever you said was not right. Now I'll turn the other cheek. I'll say, well, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to do that, and so I do turn the other cheek. But I told a guy not long ago. I said, look, I'll do that once or twice, and then he laughed and said, yeah, but you got 4 cheeks. And I said, yeah, but those other 2, I found out many times, if I apologize 4 times, all I do is get kicked in 2 of the cheeks. So I'm not sure I'm going to go that route. It's not an endless insult. It is not a time of just insult. It is how far-reaching does this assault on the Christian or the non-Christian, but specifically in this case, how far do Christians go in their ability or their desire or their tactics to defend themselves? Now, part of what I do is go around the country and teach people about defense tactics. And I'm not talking hand-to-hand. We've done a little bit of that, but mostly it is setting up a defensive perimeter and operating within that, and Cherokee fires or underground fires, the things that make sense to people that are just wanting to be able to have a chance if the grid goes down. 90% of the American public will be gone. What is it, Steve, 6-9 months? After an EMP pulse. I don't want to be in that 90% if I can help it. I've got some police officers in the St. Louis area. This one that called me said she wanted, she's a police officer, she said, we need your training. We've got some tactical training, but we need what you train. So I'm trying to work it out in June to get down to St. Louis. A little warm down there then, but after the winter I've had, I'll be glad to go. But the thing of it is, they are right there on the cutting edge saying, this isn't so we can be better police officers. This is so we can protect our families. This is so we can do what we must do when we need to do it. And so you look at those things, and then you contemplate the Operation Lightning Strike, which is the government's theoretical program to deal with those that are considered to be acute resistance people. Some leaders, some not, but resistance nonetheless. They must soften up the belly of resistance by doing what you have been warning for years, and that is by taking out those people that are priority targets and those that are secondary targets. But lightning strike, meaning done so quickly that people don't even understand what's happening. Now, does that mean by electronic means? Could be, in part. Does that mean general airborne or ground assault? Could be. Certainly, especially if you're using ISIP programs, which is an integrated super soldier program, where all comms are hooked to satellites. There is no, it's seamless in communications. That there is the body that's being perfected partly in inorganic material, impervious to small arms, but integrated with the biological. And then, you've got rapid deployment of capabilities, and they would be used as the so-called shock troops. You can understand that, and they're engaged for defensive functions or offensive functions. But whatever it is, it's going to be a tactical enhancement on the battlefield that we've never seen before. So ISUP, meaning Integrated Super Soldier Programs, are in place. And as the researcher told me that called a couple of years ago, my wife was sitting in the front room. I had the phone on speaker, as I do, simply because I've got my hearing shot out a little bit over the years, and so it's easier for me to hear. And he said, look, I'm a research scientist. My specialty is aerodynamics. He said, I'm taking time out to get away from it all, and I'm at the family farm in one of the Midwestern states. And he said, I just have to contemplate what's going on. I want to talk to you. And he said this specific to me. He said, I've listened to you and Steve Quayle together, and he said, I know how you guys think. And he said, I agree with you. And he said, it has come down to this. I have developed an absolutely revolutionary aerodynamic platform. And he said, it has come to the point where the government is now aware of it and is trying to pressure me to sign over my plans and rights and so forth and the design to the government. He said, what do you think I should do? And I'm going, of all things, you should ask me. I said, well, look, I see it as two ways. Number one, you can do it, and you'll be rewarded, and it could change everything. And if you don't, I said, they're going to get your secrets, and you're going to be dead. So you got to decide whether you want to go easy or hard. And he was quiet for several seconds. He said, so what's my third choice? And I said, well, I don't know that you have one unless you develop privately and all that kind of thing. But the point is that now I'm told, Steve, not only do they have a major, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be skipping around, but I'm a little bit mindful of that we've got so much to cover, that the Eastern Bloc, or that is the bad guys in Russia and so forth, now have capability on a very small level, a fighter plane, if you will, the size of a Cessna, that has multi-Mach speed, and the latest in armaments, of course, and the latest in technology that can shut down our weapon systems and our defensive capabilities. And so what I got when I checked today, the nickname for the same program in this country, the nickname is the Dragon. And so are we looking at that kind of thing? Or you've got in excess now, I am told, that this would be at least Mach 10 or greater, and it is surface-to-space capability. Now, we've known of TR-3s, and I believe that they exist. I believe they're out there. I believe they're in the sky. But this is 2 generations up. We're talking about something identified as TR-5. And if that is the case, then you see the exponential increase of technology, both at CERN level and in these levels. And at the same time, the government is moving to restrict the ability of anyone that says, wait just a minute, I don't agree with this, I don't want to be a part of this, or groups of people, or states full of people. And they're saying, no, we're not going to let that happen, you see, because the three-legged stool that holds Washington up, one leg is power, one leg is control, and the other leg is money. And so that stool must always remain. Washington cannot operate without it, and they will continue to do what they do. Some say they're incompetent. I say, oh no, they're uncannily evil. They are absolutely at the epitome of those who know exactly what they are doing. Don't underestimate these folks.
Amen, brother. And you, as an extension, Steve, if I can just add this now. Greg,
absolutely.
You intimated a few things about our government, and isn't it interesting as we here we are in 2015. I believe I don't recall who said this, but someone had said, "Show me your laws, and I will show you your God." And isn't it interesting here we're seeing right now in 2015, we're on the precipice of laws that will be created that's going to criminalize all public expressions of religion, in particular Christianity. Severe penalties for those who would pray at any public event, even if the prayer is voluntary or even denominationally neutral, that is. And all expressions of religion in schools and businesses and so on are going to be forbidden. And as we look, too, we've seen this happen, and we're seeing it happen more and more, that public crosses, any sign of Christianity, are being removed or forced down. Hate crime laws, and with their subsequent assertion that hate speech is verbal violence, it's going to make any criticism of homosexuals, for example, Muslims punishable, even if the remarks are made within the confines of a protected institution such as churches or synagogues and schools. Now, this is the other thing too, and we're seeing all of these things converge. And again, I'm segueing off of Greg, what you said about our government. We're seeing our schools who are taking over our children. They're punishing any child who doesn't participate in the celebration of Islam or homosexual activities. And I can go on and on and on. But, you know, we're seeing this the change in this moral landscape here in America. And I got to say, this evolutionary morality that we're seeing is, in fact, going to be the downfall, or is the downfall of this country. And Steve, I want to interject that, because I think a lot of people, I got a couple of emails, in reference to that. So, but yeah, I mean, but we've got to make a decision as well. Are we going to fight this, or are we going to just lay back and allow the Hitler-esque kind of Hitler-esque political machinery to take over? Absolutely not. So, at least not in my camp.
Well, here's the deal, Doug, and I want to draw everyone's attention to a story I posted on my website. I think it's one of the best things that's been written. The end game is here. America surrenders militarily while preparing for war against U.S. citizens. The other day, I posted a story, I think it was on the 9th, that a French submarine sinks the entire U.S. aircraft carrier group during war games. I want to read this. A series of joint naval drills between the United States and France recently didn't turn out quite the way the U.S. No doubt expected. The practice scenario ended with the French nuclear submarine that was acting as part of the enemy ship, sinking the American aircraft carrier and most of its escort. Now, I would say this, everyone listening to my voice, it doesn't matter where you are in the world listening to Greg's voice tonight, our collective voices, and the alarm that sounded, the end game is here. America surrenders militarily while preparing for war against U.S. citizens. If you look at the buildup of arms, this is something, I used to read Jane's Defense Weekly because I liked all that stuff. I mean, and there was all different kinds of publications, but just to see who had what. I gave that up years ago because that wasn't, that wasn't the focus I felt the Lord was leading me in. But the bottom line is, if you look at the U.S. military, look at the morale or immorality of it. The U.S. military waged war on Jesus Christ with the Air Force first making an offer, if you will, looking for Wiccan and satanic high priests. It actually went back to the days of Michael Aquino, 1st Earth Battalion, and I know guys that were trained up under him and with him. So the point is that in this article, it's by Susan Duclos, the end game is here. America surrenders militarily while preparing for war against U.S. citizens. Where is the disconnect? Now, I know now, and please, I'm answering my own question for everyone, but the disconnect is, how could a French submarine sink the entire U.S. aircraft carrier group during war games? And then the Russians came out and announced what Hawk and I and others, Cold War Warrior, Weather Watcher, all these guys have been warning about all these years, that obviously the Russians have an electronic countermeasures weapon system that is unlike anything in the world. So it was one thing when the Donald Cook was brought to a complete standstill. It's another thing when one of our nuclear subs in the Arctic Ocean, somebody says, well, I don't believe that because it was in the press. Well, go read about the Donald Cook and then ask yourself this. Do you understand what the triad, America's defense posture, has been for the last 50 years? And obviously, if you're taking out the entire naval assets of the U.S. military, and if you're taking out the Air Force, and people get mad at me when I talk about the F-35. Look, the F-35 and other aerial platforms, they're amazing weapons platforms and amazing technology. But someone should have screamed, help, you're a moron, when we started outsourcing production to China for our leading defensive weaponry. And now there's issues. And if you remember, Greg, pilots couldn't even fly those things because they were getting a form of pneumonia due to the particulate charcoal in the filtration system. So while China, Iran, Russia, and other countries, I'm quoting from Susan, are building up their military strength using technology that has turned the U.S. military into sitting ducks, and my answer to that is dead ducks in waiting, flexing their military and nuclear capability, the U.S. is dismantling their military piece by piece. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, you ask yourself this. All of the reports coming in, and I've talked to guys in the military, and Greg, what does it say to you when a forward fire base, what they set out in the middle of the battle zone on the furthest perimeter of your battle zone or whatever? Is it called a forward operating base? Okay. I have been contacted by wives of husbands who can get messages of their wives saying, if they go on my website, stevequayle.com, this is not a push, they will be court-martialed by their COs. What does that say to you? They will be court-martialed for going to my website.
Well, clearly, Steve, you've been hammering the center of the target so long and so hard and so well that there's nothing left of the target, the center of the target. And therefore, for any of the other guys that are shooting to have any chance of beating you in competition, they're going to have to shut you down. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Right. And little by little, I'm told that I'm banned in, I don't know if this is true, but here's what I'm trying to say. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're talking about when it all goes dark. I have no illusions and that, the Internet stays up. I don't know when it goes down, but I know it goes down. And this is why this article, and look, when I see an article that's as well laid out, now why is this French thing important to me? Dmitry Duduman had the vision of the Russians and the Chinese attacking the United States, I think, maybe 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And there were two nations that God did not make clear, the angel of the Lord did not make clear to Dmitry that would be fighting against the United States. Now, I understand this 20 years ago. Well, about 5 years ago, I pondered that question in my heart for that length of time. And in the shower, God bless showers, I think maybe if there was a way to basically have enough, privacy and stuff, maybe a lot of people would hear more from God if they stood in a shower than listening to a sermon. But fortunately for Greg Evenson and I, that's probably the way the Lord chooses to speak to us. But the point is that, and I'm not making a statement out of that, but the Lord said, after all these years, he said, Steve, the two nations that will be fighting with the Russians and Chinese against the United States are France and Germany. Now, people can say, well, they're NATO allies. Well, NATO's breaking up. And by the way, the Russians just basically pulled out of the Conventional Arms Treaty in the last couple days. You can't tell me that World War III isn't a big deal. Yeah, Greg? People yawn, they burp, they, go click their remotes, and they go back to Never Never Land, and just won't embrace World War III. I can tell you this, based on Russian defense posture, based on their civil defense posture, based on their technological advances that I'm aware of, and I'm aware of them from braggadocious, many times agents that after the Cold War, it was not illegal. A lot of people in this country hired former KGB and GRU agents and stuff to basically, give them an insight and a competitive edge into the world of espionage. Because if you look at big business and all the weapons brokering going on around the world, basically governments use espionage to further their weapons sales. But that's neither here nor there. But saying that, the idea that all of our top generals and admirals have been fired, let go, or forced out, I know we're at the top of the hour, it should make everybody, literally after this show, everyone should be on their knees and faces before God, or turn around in your chair or whatever, and just say, Lord, are these guys telling us the truth? Because email after email after email, people try and send me suggestions. Well, we got to do this, we got to do that. It's too late for what you think you got to do. What you got to do is basically get your marching orders. And people say, I don't need God. I said, you will. And so, Doug, I'll turn it back over to you. When we come back, Ray, the disconnect. We're so close to World War III. And again, traitors from within, traitors from without. That's what our destruction has been all about.
Thanks, Joe. I have to tell you that I've mentioned that I had the great privilege of meeting an Iwo Jima survivor at one of the veterans' homes. And as I was trying so hard to comfort him at a point when he said, why did we do all this to end up a nation like this? And I tried to find words, and finally when I said, look, all you can do is believe that your sacrifice made a difference. And he wondered if the country would ever get back on track. I said, I don't know, and his last words were to me, I pray to God she will. Now that is the title of this ballad, if you will. I don't call it that to be fancy. I call it because it's got that kind of limerick rhyme to it. So I'm going to go ahead. It takes about just under 5 minutes. Look, guys, I don't have this talent. I can write prose, but I just don't. God gave me this. It's to His glory and His credit. Through the shock and the awe of the Revolutionary War, America thought she could take no more. The battle raged all through the night. The British thought that they'd won the fight. But with the morning came the sun. Our flag still flew because of one. America has seen many a war. We always lead, we go before. Through the battle fog we led the way. We thought we'd seen the worst that day. The people gathered at Lexington. They stood their ground at Concord. Yet through those years of sacrifice, they never, you see, they knew the truth. They knew what would be. For freedom's fight is long and hard, and never shall be free. Today it seems the lessons are lost. The world's great seas are again being tossed. But brightly beams our Father's mercy. Our nation lives and is not yet lost. And the refrain of this is, I pray to God that our hearts be filled and give us strength to do His will. For without Him, rest assured, there'll never be a lighthouse shining by the sea. In the second verse, so many men all took the call. We never thought that we would fall. We promised family, we told our friends that we'd come home when the conflict ends. Beaten and battered, we gave our all to resist the enemy and still stand tall. So now, America, your vets are back. They stood the test. They gave their best to preserve the freedom we have left. Imagine now how they must feel when they see leaders on the attack. You see, it's not for us our leaders defend. They aim to steal your rights and make you bend. The moment has come to grab the reins and not resign. My kids and grandkids mean so much to me. I swore an oath to keep them free. And if I must, I will once more march right on through that deadly door. I cannot stop, nor can I ignore. I'll take on the tyrant that's on our shore. I pray to God that our hearts be filled and give us the strength to do His will. For without Him, rest assured, there'll never be a lighthouse shining by the sea. In the final verse, many have said America's dead. Her people have become corrupt. I say to you, on the backs of our vets are the scars that never healed up. For when they look around today and see the politicians betray, a weary, dying America must now drop to her knees and pray. For like it was so long ago when folks knew what to do, it's time again to not give in and to do what we must do. Without faith and courage, we might be just a faded part of history. We cannot fail, and as the saying goes, be all that you can be. I'll join you on the village green to gear for battle once again. So commit to God and your fellow man that we will fight and never bend. Down the winding trail, freedom's flag still waves, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. So take these words as comfort now and get your family ready. I'll say one more time, a final time to you, be true and always steady. I pray to God that our hearts be filled and give us strength to do His will. For without Him, rest assured, there'll never be a shining lighthouse by the sea.
Fantastic, Greg.
Yes. Wow. Very moving. Steve, go ahead, buddy.
One of my favorite things to photograph is a lighthouse, because a lighthouse, I'll probably post one tomorrow, one of the ones I took on the Oregon coast, don't know where, but it's one of the, I posted from time to time, because Jesus commands us to be the light of the world. And if our light goes out, then great is the darkness, but the smallest flicker. My prayer is that which Greg obviously wrote under the inspiration of the Lord would be something that triggers something in everyone, because here's where we're at tonight. And I want to make this clear. Very seldom do I post a story and then return it to the top. I just did that. If you want to see the story I'm referring to, the end game is here. America surrenders militarily while preparing for war against U.S. citizens. It's important to understand just the basics of radiation. When Fukushima went off, and I believe that was was not an accident, it was an intentional, basically literal neutron flux. If you don't understand what neutron flux is, it's a science fiction term, but it really exists. Something caused that reactor to explode. Something caused that earthquake to take place. And the fact is that now the entire Pacific is poisoned with radiation levels that every nuclear book, every nuclear reference book, when you read the amount of contamination that's deadly for humans, it's off the charts. So while everything is killing us softly with the song of the sirens of the lying devils in the mainstream media, lying devils from the siren song in the mainstream media, there are glimpses of reality. And I want to share one thing. I'm excerpting this. Doug, do you remember, Joe, do you remember, and I know, Greg, you remember, when the DHS ordered up the targets of a little boy with a real gun, a pregnant woman, little kids on swings, and basically made them the enemies? Mm-hmm. Gone were the Osama bin Laden targets and the typical, if you will, caricatures of what most people would perceive as terrorists. That did something, you guys. That programmed an entire thought process that men are always been fair game, but women and children have become fair game. And what we see in the Middle East, that's why the spirit realm, and I want to hit that in the last hour, the spirit realm, these evil spirits, they show no mercy to children. Obviously, the Illuminati sacrifices them. They rape them. They turn them into sex slaves. They do every form of debauchery that I won't go into on the radio. You know, people, when Ted Gunderson was alive and others, they were talking about this stuff, but it just went over most people's backs. And you get the British monarchy involved in pedophilia and the entire country of Great Britain covering up for, world-class pedophiles and leading to the highest ranks of American politics. Oprah Winfrey did a show. I think she showed 8 houses of prostitution for children that was taken off, and I don't even know that I think it was scrubbed from the net. But let me read this, because this is something that, again, Susan wrote. I believe this is a magnum opus. That's Latin for a large and important work of a body of literature. I think it's that important. I don't say that to flatter her. I don't say that to flatter anyone. I fear God too much to flatter anyone. But listen to this. This should get into, Doug, what you and I first started years ago together in the HQ Intel Alert, trying to tell people what was going on up in New York and the area with all of the activity. But listen, this, I just want to quote and read this. DHS has labeled right-wing extremists a greater threat than the terror organizations called ISIS, who behead journalists and aid workers, kill Christians across the globe, burn a Jordanian pilot in a cage, then filmed it all and released the videos to the public. In 2013, it was reported that the Army training material listed evangelical Christians, now listen to this, Catholics, and some Jews as religious extremists alongside the Ku Klux Klan, Hamas, and Al-Qaeda. Remember the formula, ladies and gentlemen, IVND. Identify, vilify. Here's the vilification now. Nullification you're seeing, and destruction will follow. Perhaps one of the most disturbing visual examples of this type of targets our militarized police are being trained to take out comes from 2013 reports where it was revealed that law enforcement agencies were using actual targets that represented the threat of a pregnant woman and children. Doug, this broke my heart. I remember being on your show back then and just, pulling hair out and screaming to the point, not screaming, I don't know how to scream, I can't physically scream with my voice, but being as emphatic emotionally as I could get. But guess what? So the company that made the targets then said, we're sorry, we apologize. That's not the issue. The issue is what kind of monstrous, hedonous, absolute debauched creatures from hell slithering their way into our dimension would have people thinking that somehow a woman, and they make her holding a gun, it's probably because she's getting ready to be raped, and showing her in a nursery. These are all psychologically profiling and psychologically programming. Now, I ask you this. Haven't little kids been arrested holding toy guns? Haven't little kids been blown away holding toy guns? Haven't we had pregnant mothers killed by SWAT troops, or at least mothers killed in Washington, D.C.? You mean to tell me one 260-pound, fit as a fiddle, 6'6" guy can't basically pull a woman out of the car without blowing her brains out, and however many rounds were fired into her body? I'm talking about the lady at the Capitol building. What's happening, you guys, and this is something that people have to understand, behind every dehumanizing, inhumanizing act or action is a demon, is a fallen angel. Behind every political, self-indulgent whore who's too busy with someone else's private parts to care about the country that made him great, that's as tactful as I know how to be. And oh, by the way, as someone who's written about ancient history to the degree I have, and who has basically chronicled and chronologically put things into their proper time frame, at least from a perspective I can justify with ancient writings, myths, and legends, it was the fallen angels that taught men how to even become sodomites in the first place. You might say it was a sexual preference of the fallen angels. I quote that in my book, Genesis 6 Giants, I think it was Diodorus who made that statement. He says it, and this may not be word for word, but it's close. He said, though they have comely female giants, the men prefer the pleasure of each other over that of their women. So, ladies and gentlemen, all of what we're seeing, the headlines, are being written by principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness in heavenly places that is soon to come to earth. Jesus said, behold, I give you power to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. But you don't get that by whimpering. You don't get that by retreating. You don't get that by hanging out on blogs. You don't get that by basically, complaining to your equal complainant group. You get that boldness by spending time in the King. In other words, you must become a new creation. I must. I look for the day when old things pass away, all things become new. I hate my sin nature. I have one. I wish I didn't. I don't want it. I've asked the Lord, can't you just fix it so I don't free willingly sin? Can't you just take sin out of, and the bottom line is sin is a force, ladies and gentlemen. It's a power. And that's why to as many as receive him, Jesus gave us the power to become the sons of God. You can't fight it in your life. And to those of you who think that you're tougher, I'll say one word that'll bring the toughest man to his knees. Two words, biological weapon. It doesn't matter. Whatever your strength is, it's not good enough for the day. Whatever your skill set is, it's not good enough for the day. But God can teach your hands to war. God can teach your knees to war. God can teach you how to pray and how to take dominion over this stuff. And imprecatory prayer is what needs to be prayed for Kent Hovind. Literally, imprecatory prayer means, Lord, if they won't release him, then take the men and women who are being used by hell, remove them off the face of the earth. Are you asking God to take them off the face of the earth as in kill them? I'm asking God to remove them. I'm asking for the people of God to say, this is our brother. And I don't believe that Jesus was kidding when he's talking about his bride. I don't believe he's kidding when he's talking about his church. And the word church, I use the word, I don't mean the Catholic, Protestant, Jewish synagogue. I mean the ecclesia, the ones who are called out of the world unto him. Doesn't matter. I see two trees in the scripture, the olive tree, obviously, and the fig tree. Bottom line is Derek Prince has got a great teaching on the olive and the fig and how God is the one that grafts them together. The people that simply want to blame the Jews or blame the this or blame the that don't understand. Of course there are false Jews. There are Jews that call themselves Jews and are not. There are Chinese who are not Jews, who are Taoists, who are under the influence of Lucifer. There are U.S. citizens that go to church, i.e., on a Sunday, pretending to be married, and they're as gay as geese, and they basically don't even, have any real relationships with their wives. They just live their separate lives, but they have what are called trophy wives just so they can get by with what they're doing. But God is seeing it. Greg, one of the things, too, that is amazing to me is the fact that one of the least popular things I've ever said in my entire radio career, or career calling, my time on the radio, I guess, is the fact that to actually be told that before America is destroyed, God's going to reveal the sins of the leaders to the people and the people's sins before their God. And I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that did not happen until the Lord released that word, certainly. And the point is everybody said I was crazy because things weren't bad like they are now. Things weren't as developed for the plan of hell to be so played out right before your eyes. Yet, if people don't care, I understand that if they feel helpless, of course. You and I wake up knowing we're one man, you're a man, I'm a man, we've got what we have, but we also know we have the God of heaven on our side. And somebody once said, when God is with you, you're a majority. 1,000, one will chase 1,000, two will chase 10,000. The scripture I gave everybody tonight in Isaiah is really critical that you memorize. And so what will be the defining moment in your life? I'm speaking now to everyone out there. What will be the thing that you say, I will no longer go quietly into the night. I will no longer hold my tongue. I'll no longer care more about what people think than what God thinks. I'll no longer be afraid to lose my life because in losing it, I'm going to gain it. I'm not talking about anyone taking their life through suicide. I want to make that clear. I'm saying that when you come to that attitude, you take on a whole different perspective. And again, the thing that is critical, as Greg read what God gave him, these men and women who have already laid down their lives, what they gave us was a time out of the battle. But now, while they gave the time out of the battle, it's no longer where a professional army will fight over there so the enemies won't come here. You are now the enemy, ladies and gentlemen, and the real enemies have been sanctioned. They're being financed. They're being given intel in real time. The point is that all the appointments in the current cabinet administration, they're all Muslims by their own faith and by their own testimonies. And I would say this, they couldn't be in that administration. And there is no such thing as non-militant Islam. There are Islamists who are not militant, but in their scope of beliefs, it ultimately boils down to this. They believe that they will live under a theocracy ruled by the Imam Mahdi and with the return of Muhammad. So the point is that they believe that, and they're willing to kill you. They're willing to butcher you. They're willing to burn you. They're willing to crucify. They're willing to do every heinous, horrible, wicked thing. And Greg, the ultimate slap in the face is that when God said his sheep became meat for all the predators, God wasn't just talking stories about, sheep and wolves. Our brethren have been butchered. They've been cut up. They've been sold in the meat marketplaces of terrorists that the United States government funds. So, ladies and gentlemen, who's king? Is it Jesus or is it Washington? Because Washington is going to make sure that no one's going to go into the New World Order, as Barbara Marx Hubbard and others have stated, without the Luciferic initiation. David Spangler had made this statement, too, that under the New World Order, bottom line is it will be by what? Consent or by conquest, but make sure you understand this. They're talking, not me. There will be a New World Order. And unfortunately, the Bible says that it's given power, the beast is given power to make war on the saints. So shouldn't you, ladies and gentlemen, seek God for his battle plan for your life? Greg can't tell you what to do when that moment comes. I can't tell you what to do when that moment comes. We can tell you what we've decided to do, and we can share with you that will help others. But the fact is that you're going to have to be there when there's no one else for that. Doug, when you drew your little word picture and did a marvelous job, I don't think people can recognize, even rationalize yet, embrace emotionally I know what it's like when my computer goes down. Obviously, I live on my computer because I'm posting stories. When the power goes out, when there's no communication, the first thing you want to do is run and call someone to make sure that their power's not out. The answer to that is, by the way, for those of you that have to stay in touch with family members, one of the best things you can do, and this is a pitch for an advertiser because I practice what I preach in this. I've told my stories, but satellite phones are a good thing to have, especially if the person that, is important enough for you to keep in contact with. But all communication, when they go down, they'll be jammed. And then everyone's left to that, I don't know what you call it, that pucker factor moment. You will either have a plan and you'll immediately respond based on your training, or you'll sit and wonder, oh me, oh my, and be like Alice in Wonderland, being disheveled with your thinking, being frightened by the events. And the lack of knowledge, meaning the lack of understanding what's going on, will drive most people simply wacky. And we've watched the supermarkets clear out. We've seen Venezuela now with line standing, and now they're going to do fingerprint so people can't hoard. The bottom line is do what you can do. And people ask me now, what is the most important thing after getting your heart right with Jesus? Number one thing is this: get the food you can get, because with the drought, with the weather and the geoengineering taking place, I wrote a book about it. Weather Wars was way ahead of my time by the grace of God. I would recommend that to you. You can understand if you make war on the most fertile part of the coastal plains, especially, and things like the valley, Central Valley in California, and you steer all of the rivers of water in the atmosphere away from them, you dry up the land, and then you come in and buy up the land. You get the land at a lot cheaper price because the productivity of a vineyard is multiple times of what it's worth only as land. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're under attack in every form, every fashion, every way, and while it does not yet appear, because the television's still on, Dancing with the Stars, and I think, probably Dancing with the Fallen Stars, and the word stars is angels. The city of Los Angeles, in my opinion, means the city of the lost angels, meaning the fallen angels. And if you look at the root, this is something that I want all of you to understand. If I could leave you with one scriptural understanding, it's this: look at the root of evil, then you can understand the fruit of evil. If you complain about the fruit of evil without never identifying the root of evil, it's like trying to treat one form of cancer when there's a specific area of your body that's feeding your entire body with cancer. So that's where we're at tonight, and that's what we're saying. The day will come, no communication, no gas, no ability to go. But remember this: the gangs and the wolves will already be planning for that day. They'll already be set to go after the caribou. And the bottom line is, don't be a dumb caribou. Be the caribou that set a trap for the wolves and then blast every wolf that comes to take the family of caribou that God has given you charge over. I thought that might be a nice way to say it, Greg. Go ahead.
Well, thanks, Steve. What a great segment. Look, I could go on and on with this list. I won't read the names tonight, not even first names. It just takes too long. But I will say to the men and women who have spoken to me in the last 4 to 6 months, some of you were completely scoffing about it. Many of you were kind of in between. And then, of course, there's a cadre of you that are right with Steve and I. And you're upset because you can't get Steve or I on the radio anymore because you're not being allowed to. All I can tell you, especially those domestic stateside in law enforcement, the time has come. You asked me at some point to tell you if I was on a radio broadcast when things were imminent to the point that you really believed they were imminent. I'm telling you tonight, it's imminent. We are looking at a matter of months. I am not a date setter. I did it once in my life, and I had to eat a lot of crow because I set the date that I was told, and I think I was set up, but nonetheless, I took responsibility for it. I'm not setting a date, but I'm giving you a time frame that is a few months down the road. We're looking at a confluence of things occurring in September that I believe, Steve, you are free to disagree, but I think that knowing you that you understand this picture, and I said to you, ladies and gentlemen, that I would tell you so you would have that final segment of time, 5 to 6 months, that you could put your act together, get that ground ready, get that remote cabin set, that you had the supplies you needed, and so forth. That's military and police folks. You're listening tonight. I know you are. This is not a call to panic. This is not a call for, excuse me, some kind of craziness. This is a call to be prepared. Be prepared spiritually, number one. That's how we started this broadcast tonight. I will tell you again, without that, everything else you do is meaningless. It won't matter. So be prepared spiritually first. Get on your knees. Ask the Lord Jesus Christ to forgive you. Walk with Him, and you're ready to meet whatever happens. Number two, be prepared in every way that you can be, that you know about, that we've discussed, that we've said before on the radio many, many times. And you've got a great vehicle in this show every single day. The Hagmann Report is absolutely the best out there. And so if you listen faithfully and you follow what you hear, you'll be up to date and you'll be able to deal with it. Now look, one more thing, and that is this. I'm going to breathe just a short prayer because, again, time is kind of on a constraint. But I will tell you that this is heartfelt. And this, again, one more time, this goes out, number one, to all of you wives of the military and police officers that are so concerned about the orders coming down to your men that you know they are struggling with in their mind and emotions because they don't know whether or not they can obey those laws. They don't even know, or rules and orders. They don't even know if they're legal. I will tell you have no obligation to follow or execute an illegal order. It is not allowed. It is prohibited by Nuremberg, along with common sense, civil law, and criminal law. So please take note, be discerning, and do what's right. And gentlemen, for those of you that have wives in the military or law enforcement, the same thing goes here. Only your leadership now is going to be in supporting your wives at a time when keeping that household straight and doing what you need to do in your part of it is more critical now than ever. Please support them with your prayers. Heavenly Father, we come before you in this late part of the hour with this simple prayer. We trust you, Lord, because you created everything. You are responsible for the universe. You are the creator of our hearts and our spirits, our souls. We turn to you tonight and say, would you please, Father, would you give the guidance and the love and the preparation that these folks are seeking tonight by the hundreds, I'm sure thousands, but I've heard from scores of them, and I know that's multiplied. Lord, you know them, you know each one. Would you give them the courage to drop to their knees, husbands, wives, children, and to prepare themselves for that which is coming in such short order. Defend them, Lord, from those terrorists that are in this country, those that would do harm to them or their families simply because they're in the position they are. I ask that you put a hedge around them. May they realize, as Ephesians 6 tells us about the full armor of God, that it will be absolutely obvious to everybody they work with. We'll give you the praise and the glory tonight, Father, for that which you are going to do, and we trust you in that. In Jesus' precious, wonderful name, amen.
Well, I mean, that's absolutely true, Doug. I mean, people that we've had on, your radio show, people that we've interfaced with, people that, I mean, I just got to tell you, the level of betrayal, the level of insertion, I mean, it's like there are a lot of people. I'll tell everyone this. I don't meet with anybody on the QT. So, please don't ask me to meet you on the QT. You got something to tell me. If you can't tell me your real name, I will not talk to you. I understand that some of you may be running for your life, but really don't think that, you just can come strolling in to anybody's lives. I say that, Doug, because I'm seeing it. I want to go to a word that the Lord gave me 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm not sure the year, but it was before it became obvious. It was right at the transition point. Now, people, you judge this and tell me if this has happened, because this isn't after the fact. I looked up, behold, I am against thee, as Michael, the author of the CERN articles, pointed out. When God says that, he means it. There's 14 times in the Old Testament where this statement, behold, I am against thee, appears. And I'm reading part 2 and 3 of a prophecy. I won't release the first part until I get multiple witnesses. I've held on to it for 6 years. Some people have read the whole thing, but those are the people I trust. I think you're one of them, Doug. But to the Pentagon. Now, Greg, this was given again 6 years ago, I think. I'm against your plans to make war against my people and my land. Is it a small thing in your eyes for you to make war against me, saith the Lord? You trust in the technology of the fallen ones and the hidden and secret weapons that you believe will keep you safe. Has it not dawned on you that as you study in your war colleges that betrayal and destruction have come from traitors within and armies without? I want you to think that. Keep this in mind. The son of perdition has been a liar since the beginning of times, and as all empires before you have fallen, littering the pages of history, so is yours. Your lives in an instant, this is what you said, Doug, will flash before you. Repent and turn away from all your evil schemes, just as Judas sold my son Jesus out for 30 pieces of silver, so have you sold me out, ? For is I the living God who gave you the victories over your foreign enemies when you sought to preserve that which was just. Are you so deceived and seduced that you cannot see the illuminated ones will utterly consume you and their promises will fail to give you your expected outcome? Now here's the clincher. To the gate openers, I ask you a simple question. This gives me shivers. Who do you think bound the demons and the fallen angels that you seek so feverishly in the first place to loose? For was I the living God, out of the love for my creation, mankind, that bound them at the first time and will seal them in chains at the final time? The promise of eternal life apart from me will not deliver you from my wrath and my judgment. And now I say to my generals, colonels, and captains, and all those who still call themselves by my name, to the fighting men and women, let not your hearts be troubled. For I will strip the veneer off those who feign to serve me, so you can see the evil one's plans behind those who send you to your death. The time is at hand that you will have to do what I have put in your heart to do. This is what Greg is just praying. You will have to resist the orders that have been given to you to destroy your brethren with all that is within your reach. I will lay out my plans clearly before you in dreams and visions and holy angelic encounters, for I, the Lord, will protect and provide for your families as you seek me in prayer and fasting and seek me with all your hearts. No human being, and as much as I don't like being human, I could have written that long ago without it being given to him. And look, I'm nobody. I'm just a messenger. God appointed me to warn his people. He promised. Why am I saying that? Because, ladies and gentlemen, what Greg Evenson just shared when he prayed for the men and women, both in law enforcement and military, is a direct answer to that. And I don't think Greg remembers. Maybe he did. I'll not speak for you, Greg, but how timely is that? You can tell when God has said something because of the timeless nature of it. And this is what Michael, who put this in, I think, the latest CERN essay that's up on my website, I am against your plans. It was him who drew my attention to that. I didn't know that appeared 14 times in Scripture. Behold, I am against thee. Behold, 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 I am against thee. So what that tells me, Doug, is that the entire defense industry, the entire powers that be, are at war with the King of Glory. The failures that they will see in battle will be so horrific. This isn't trying to demoralize anybody. The only thing that will deliver, and I don't care if you're a naval man, an Air Force man, Marine, whatever, your individual faith will deliver you. But unfortunately, because of your individual faith in Jesus Christ, you will be turned over to either be early outed or worse. So we're now at that point. I concur, Greg, with what you just said. This is it, okay? When I say this is it, if someone will say, well, nothing happens tomorrow. See, you guys are false this, false that. Oh, yeah? Where were you 25 years ago? Where were you 40 years ago? Where were you, people who are experts on everything? And, what I'm just trying to say is you are no place to be seen. So you take what's already happened and then you put your twist on it. God will give his view and perspective before it happens. And know this, that the word of the Lord in that thing, do you not know that it was I who gave you the victories will become so real and so prescient and so obvious as Greg, when Vladimir Putin brings the Orthodox Christians priests out to bless his troops, I understand communism. I understand the whole Cold War. I was a student of it. I don't understand everything, but I understand enough of it. But I'll tell you one thing. He at least knows where the power lies, and whoever honors God, they can honor God even out of their own motives, but God will still. Now look, the children of this world are more wise than the children of light. He will reap the benefits of honoring a godly principle. Our military will reap the death benefits of not honoring godly principles. Satan is the quintessential divider of homes. He's the divider of houses. He's the divider of those who once walked in his ways. So while these guys are openly doing all their black magic, occult rituals, blood sacrifices, human sacrifices, sexual perversion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it goes on and on and on, there is a God who loves his creation, who sent his son Jesus to die in our place, and that's who I stake all my trust in. Do I stake any trust in myself? Absolutely not. Do I trust myself? Absolutely not. Do I trust God? I'm working on it. But I see daily that I have to remind myself of what the Scripture says, because every day it's a battle, and it will be for everyone listening to this who trusts Jesus, because your eyes are going to deceive you. Your ears are going to deceive you. It may be members of your own family that will try and seduce you away from the truth. There are people who will try and literally seduce you, if you're a man or a woman, away from the truth. There's men who will come into your homes, especially ladies. Trust God with your emotions, those of you who are single, and believe, seek, cry out for him to bring you the right man, because there's a whole lot of vampires out there, and I'm talking about people that do nothing but suck the life out of others. People don't fellowship with people that are unproven and untrue. Don't open your heart unwisely. Be, as somebody once told me, I said, yeah, I'm working on that part. Be an armadillo. Be hard on the outside, meaning having your armor on, but be soft on the inside, and only open up to Jesus. And that's what, David Langford taught me this. Ask the Lord, is the spirit behind this person of you or the evil one? And, the bottom line is, if you tell somebody, something, be very careful who you trust, and only trust people that have gone through it. Only trust people that have been in the battle, because someone who isn't battle-hardened really doesn't know how to respond. And I'm now talking about the things of the Spirit. So what Greg has prayed, for those of you in the military and law enforcement, that is a word of the Lord, and he prayed exactly the prophecy that God gave me to warn the people. And one of the parts I haven't released, the main part of it, I'll read you the last sentence of the part. I'm not trying to toy with you, but I can't until I'm told to. Already the drums of war beat louder and louder, and your betrayal by those who back you draws closer with each minute of the day.